have some Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise news today. A24, the movie production company, is in pole position to acquire the television and film rights to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise. And I think that this is a good thing, and I'm going to talk about why. And I have a couple of things that I'm a little worried about, but I'm going to have a conversation about it, so tune into this, because I think that there's a few points that I haven't been seeing a lot of people mentioning that I think are really exciting. Right now, it looks like they are going to be producing stuff with JT Mollner, who directed Strange Darling. We'll get to more of that in a little bit, and Glenn Powell and Roy Lee. So that is the thing that I kind of wanted to discuss right out of the gate that I think are positives. If you look at Roy Lee as a producer, and I think a lot of people are getting hung up on the A24 part of it, which makes total sense. It's like a big brand name now. A24, if you don't know, big time movie production company that got their start kind of, producing these horror movies. They kind of have made their mark as like this. It started out as like a cult following almost, but they've become so mainstream now. They're even doing an Elden Ring movie with Alex Garland directing. So you got a lot of that stuff going on. But I think that the thing that I noticed was the JT Mollner and Roy Lee and Glenn Powell. And the reason I think this is a big deal is even though Glenn Powell might be an executive producer to this, I'm sure that's going to be his role with this. Roy Lee will be the main producer. And then JT Mollner will probably direct that first television series. I think that Roy Lee attached to this is a really good thing. If you look at his filmography, he got his start as a producer, getting involved with bringing a lot of Japanese cinema and making it into American remakes. So whether it be The Ring, movies like that, think about The Grudge, The Ring, stuff like that. He's also been main producer on the most recent The Long Walk. So this is a guy who's been in the business a long time and has been in that producer role for a long time and has been in the horror genre a long time. Now look, if you go down his filmography, he's got movies, ranging from classics to movies like 2011's The Roommate. So again, that's just the life of the producer. Sometimes it's an executive producer, sometimes it's the main producer. But I think that name right there is one that people aren't talking about enough, that his involvement with the JT Mollner and Glenn Powell group. Roy Lee is the big name in those three names in terms of what you can expect to get from a television and film perspective. If you've been keeping up with it, and I don't blame you if you haven't, it's kind of like producers are kind of those like names that you don't really keep up with. I mean, obviously Jerry Bruckheimer, stuff like that, you notice a little bit more. But Roy Lee is a guy that a lot of these HBO Max, he's done a lot of stuff with HBO Max and Stephen King adaptations. So we've gotten I think he's doing the It series that's coming out, Welcome to Derry. I think he was involved with, and I'll have to double check it, but I think he was involved with Salem's Lot. So this is a guy who's not only been able to produce movies that have gone to the big screen, but he's also been doing a lot of stuff with television. So it's no secret that Texas Chainsaw Massacre is going to try to go the television route. And I don't know if that's a rights thing early on, because we've already been hearing about that they might do a Netflix movie as well, and A24 might back that. I don't know if that was already like something in the contract where it's like, hey, we definitely want to have a Netflix movie involved. And so we'll see what unfolds with that. But I totally expect there to be some big time, I won't say big time, big budget, but there'll be some theatrical releases to this. But it seems like they're testing the waters with a television series. And Roy Lee's attachment, for me, is a good thing, because here's a guy who's been working in horror for a long time. I think he's tackled on some big properties. And even though there's been some misses on his resume as a producer, there's also been some big time hits. So for a franchise like this, I think that him having JT Mollner as a guy that's going to direct the series is a huge plus. And the reason that's such a huge plus is because if you've seen Strange Darling, and if you haven't seen that, I got a review on my channel. I encourage you to check out. But before that, I'd encourage you to check out the movie. Strange Darling is a very interesting film. It's a film that I thought was great, and it has a feel to it where you can totally see that being a great thing for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise. I think that would work big time. Just the way that film is shot and just the way that film looks. There's a grittiness to it. There's a personality to it that really feels like Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It feels like it's in the same universe as that franchise. And so you'd have to kind of see it to see what I'm talking about, but definitely check that out. The other stuff that I wanted to talk about that I think is really positive for this is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise has been all over the place. It has had the original movie, which is considered one of the greatest horror films of all time. Even the sequel was considered just this out of left field, complete different take on the franchise, and it worked for a lot of people. It worked for me. I really enjoy that one. But then after that, you kind of get a lot of hit or misses. There's a lot of lows to this franchise. There's been some great highs to this franchise. It's been all over the place in terms of quality and kind of what they've been doing with it. And I think that a production company like A24, if nothing else, and again, we're getting to the point where A24 is becoming one of the big production companies. If they're competing with Paramount and they're competing with all these other production companies, A24 is no longer this indie darling that's like you're rooting for the underdog. A24 is now entering in the world of like big time movie production companies. And so we have to kind of, and that's one of the concerns that we'll get to here in a little bit. But as of right now, they're still in that position to be giving filmmakers a lot of creative control over the source material, over the product. And I think that's going to benefit us as fans a lot. I think that there's a risk involved with straying too far away from why people love the franchise to begin with. But the original just celebrated its 50th anniversary. And I think that it's important if you want to keep franchises alive. Now, if you're one of the people that think that everything's been done with Texas Chainsaw Massacre and there's no need to keep revisiting it, I totally understand that. And that's totally fine. But if you're somebody that wants to continue to see Texas Chainsaw Massacre stuff, you want to continue to see Halloween, you want to continue to see Nightmare on Elm Street, Scream, all these properties, you want to have that balance of being something that's recognizable to Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but you want to at least try to see something that's different. I mean, I don't want to speak for everyone. That's just me. I want to see what a director can do with the IP, and I want to see if they can do something interesting with it. We all know that could backfire. I know a lot of people just want to see certain Halloween-style films. Some people only want to see this from the Friday the 13th franchise. I get that. But for me, I'm excited to see what a director like a JT Mollner can do with the material. I'm excited to see what a fresh voice and a fresh set of eyes can do with the franchise. And I think that A24 will at least hire directors that are going to have a take on it that we might not expect, that might end up being something that we never asked for, but ends up being incredible. And I don't know if I could say that for the other production companies. Now granted, Osgood Perkins, Jordan Peele, if those production companies would have got it, I think that they would have done something interesting with it as well. But like Paramount, for instance, who knows who Paramount, there's a lot of positives that Paramount could have brought to it. Taylor Sheridan, he is able to film stuff. You got Yellowstone, the TV series, you got Tulsa King, you got a lot of stuff that Taylor Sheridan can do. But Taylor Sheridan also has gotten to a point where his name is on a lot of different stuff. He produces a lot of different stuff. How much time is he actually going to dedicate to making Texas Chainsaw Massacre the best version of that it can be? A24, on the other hand, I feel like they produce it, but they give the filmmakers, they give the writers, they give the people that are making the product a lot of control over it, just because they want to see something unique. And that's kind of been their track record leading up to this point. Now, we'll talk about it here in a little bit, that the bigger you get as a production company, the more that seems to go away. But as of right now, it seems like A24, that directors really like working with that production company because of the freedom that they get, because of the chances they get to take and the risks they get to take. So we'll see what that means for the quality of the movie. But I do think that that's my biggest positive that I can say about A24 if they end up with the film and television rights, is the JT Mollner thing already excites me because of what I saw with Strange Darling. Again, we'll see if he does well with the series, but just in terms of that track record of that movie and how it looks, I'm very excited for that. We know that Roy Lee can bring in some big budget feel to it. They're going to put a lot of money and production value into this, I feel like, because A24 is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And so I feel like we are going to be getting their best effort on this, because this is like they're finally, they got a big franchise that they've been wanting to get. They wanted to get the Halloween series there for a while, or they wanted to get the Halloween franchise rights there for a while. They're doing the Crystal Lake series on Peacock. They're really wanting to be a force in horror, it seems like. And let's just see where that goes. I think out of all the choices, this is the most like exciting, but it's also the most unknown of what we're going to get in terms of like, are they going to go kind of art house with this? Are they going to do something completely different? Or are they going to give us just a straight up Texas Chainsaw movie? Time will tell, but I think they're going to hire the right people behind the camera with the script and all that stuff to make it the best possible version. That's what the track record has said. Not that A24 hasn't made some movies that haven't been great, but they at least have a sense of creativity behind them that excites me. Let's talk about real quick what I think some of the negatives could be for this. So some of the negatives I think could be for this is just what I said. A24 kind of giving directors and writers kind of, this creative control over it. Maybe you do alienate a lot of the fans of the franchise because you're trying to do something too different. And you're trying to tell a story that doesn't really resonate with the existing fans. And if you try to just go for new fans, I don't know if the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise can succeed without really getting the rabid fan base that franchise already has on board. So you have to really find that balance, and that makes me a little nervous. If A24 is starting to get bigger, they have bigger projects. They're putting a lot of money into the Elden Ring with Alex Garland. So how that's going to look is going to be really interesting. From a physical media standpoint, I'm not nervous about it. I'm actually a little excited because if you really look at what A24 is doing with physical media, they have like the coffee table books with the scripts. They do their own version of Blu-ray releases. They do a lot of cool things with the merchandise. So I'm not as concerned from the physical media standpoint. But it is something to keep an eye on because at least with some of the big production companies, you could see them doing at least a standard release, making sure they get their television and films on Blu-ray, at least on 4K. We'll see what A24 does, but I've been actually pretty excited and pretty pleased with how they've been handling their physical media over at A24, especially when they do stuff in-house for like these cool releases that we kind of see with the different Blu-ray slip cases, and we kind of see with the merchandise, and we see with the coffee table books and all that stuff. And the last negative, I think, is once a franchise goes on for as long as Texas Chainsaw Massacre has gone on for, and you have a new production company that kind of takes over, once they've entered in this realm now of big IP, that changes everything a little bit. Friday the 13th, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, that's the reason a lot of these A24 movies has succeeded and why they've been so well regarded by fans is a lot of that is because they got out of the way. They're again, I want to stress this. They're a production company. A24 is a production company. Sometimes a movie will go to a film festival. A24 will go to that film festival and they will get the rights to that movie and they'll say, hey, we're going to take care of the marketing. And A24's marketing is incredible. And that's why they are who they are, is because their marketing for their movies has been phenomenal. So I want to just stress that. Like, they're going to be building stuff in-house as A24 now. Once they get the rights, it seems like they're going to be a little bit more involved as opposed to going the festival route and picking up a movie or buying a script and all this different stuff. So we'll see how they do with that. But that is something that I'm very interested to see. How involved are they going to be? I hope they're very involved in the marketing of this. But that is something to keep an eye on because the bigger that production company gets, now their focus is splintered along a lot of different lines. And that's what we see with a lot of the big studios like Warner Brothers, Paramount, Universal. We see that they have to, Universal has Blumhouse. So Blumhouse is kind of doing their own thing, but they're still under the Universal banner. Is A24 going to have something like that pretty soon to where it's not just A24, it's a side, it's a side production company or a smaller production company within the big A24 brand. We'll have to kind of see that. I don't want to get lost in the lingo and stuff, but just keep that in mind that A24 is a production company. I'm more excited to see who they hire on as director, writer, producer, all that different stuff. So far, if this ends up coming true, where it is A24, it is JT Mollner, it is Roy Lee, it is Glenn Powell, at least for the television series they're talking about, that's exciting. We'll see what they do with the franchise overall, but this is going to be a very interesting time if you're a Texas Chainsaw Massacre fan, but it also could be a really exciting time because I feel like you should be excited for this franchise, and there hasn't been a lot to be excited about lately, and I think that is going to be a really interesting time to see how A24, if they do decide to get the rights to this, how they're going to navigate that. But let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear everybody's opinion. I want to get a conversation going about it. I know there's a lot of conversation already going on about it, so I definitely want to get involved with those as well. Let me know what you think about this. Let me know if you're excited. Let me know where you wish Texas Chainsaw Massacre would have landed or where you hope they land, and we'll have a conversation in the comments. I'll be reading them. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.